As I sank down into the darkness below the ball pit, I began to hyperventilate. I was having trouble breathing, feeling suffocated as if I were drowning. My heart pounded faster as my mind raced. All light evaporated from the space around me, and I was cloaked in blackness as I descended further from the surface, feeling increasingly desperate and trapped. The thing gripping my ankle was tearing strips of flesh from my leg as I struggled and kicked, trying to get away. I could feel its skin, rough like sandpaper, but it was silent and made no noise as it dragged me downwards. Then, it suddenly let go. I fell down through the air and landed on a tile floor. I looked up and saw the colorful balls floating and dancing above me on the ceiling, defying gravity as if there was nothing but air to hold them aloft. I looked around, terrified, for the thing that had grabbed my leg and brought me below, but saw nothing. I was in a dark space with checkerboard patterns all over the walls, floors, and low ceilings. Another part of the funhouse, I guessed. The creature that had dragged me down there probably lived in the ball pit, and I guessed that its purpose was to bring people down here to this disorienting space below. "Gary?" No response. There were several doorways leading different directions, and I started walking towards one of them. Looking inside, I saw a space that was exactly the same as the one I was in, like a mirror image. "Gary?" I spun around as I heard laughter and the sound of feet dropping down to the floor. Somehow I was unsurprised to see the carnival workers and clowns who had been pursuing me had followed me down below. They spotted me instantly and began to race towards me, their large knives held high above their heads, smiles plastered on their red and white painted faces, their crimson eyes glowing in the dim light. I turned and ran, not knowing where I was going exactly, just ducking through one disorienting doorway and then another and another. Much to my surprise, the third doorway I went through brought me back face to face with a clown holding a butcher's cleaver. The doors didn't follow the ordinary laws of physics, it would seem, and it brought me back to my would-be murderers instead of allowing me to escape them. This was despite the fact that I had run very much in the opposite direction away from them. The jester grinned and laughed, his rotten yellow teeth and blackened gums showing as he chuckled. "Hello, little bug. You can try to get away, but good luck escaping. Those blood and guts aren't yours. They're ours for the taking." Instead of using the sharp end of the cleaver as I had imagined he would, he took the back side of it and whacked me across the forehead, knocking me out cold. As I was unconscious, I had another vision, even more vivid and real than the last. I was standing before the great beating heart at the center of the Crimson Carnival, exactly the same as last time. Only this time, it was bigger. It was the size of a school bus now, and had grown larger since my last dream. It hung suspended from the ceiling of the great canopy tent at the center of the fair. It was beating loud and heavy, like a massive drum. The muscle contractions were enormous and labored, terrifying and apocalyptic. Holding it aloft were the veins and arteries which pumped poisonous blood to the inhabitants of the place. The massive heart beat so loudly it pierced my ears, like a jet airliner taking off right next to me. only it was a dull thud that hurt my brain as well. The heart extended a group of blood vessels towards me, and they enveloped me like vines, wrapping around my arms and legs, then my midsection and my face. They went up my nose and into my eyes and dug their poisonous tips into my skin, pumping the toxic waste of the carnival into me, making me one of its minions forever. My eyes snapped open as I awoke and looked up to see I was in the center of a ring like in a circus. There were empty benches all around, extending up to the great dizzying heights above, and a spotlight shone down brightly from the ceiling far up in the distance. I stood and looked around in wonder, realizing I was in the very center of the canopy now. There was no great beating heart as I had imagined in my dreams, but it had felt so real. There was a man approaching, his soft footsteps echoing in the enormous space. He was dressed like a ringmaster in a circus and was wearing a red military-style shirt with gold epaulets, embroidery, and buttons down the front, a black top hat and pants. He sauntered forward and I saw that he carried a whip in his hand. It was a cat o' nine tails, and the tips of it were branched outward like capillaries of a vein. "Welcome," he said, walking towards me. His eyes were crimson red and flickered like fire, showing no emotion. Who are you?" I asked. "I created this place. It's my home. At least for the last 100 years or so. I always loved carnivals, you see. They might just be the best thing you humans ever came up with. They're full of games and gambling, drugs and debauchery, guns and candy, dizzying rides and delicious deep-fried fatty foods. All it took was a bit of creative design work to make a symbol that could be used for a purpose. For us demons, this is what you'd call a place of power. That's why I set up this whole thing. I mean, when you live forever, the world can get sort of boring, and it's tough to find anything interesting to do." "So, you're not gonna mention the part about you stealing their blood? What's the purpose of all that exactly?" "Oh, you've been talking to Gary, haven't you? That son of a bitch is gonna get it one of these days. Alright, enough questions. This isn't a Bond movie. I'm not gonna give you all the answers. You've gotta at least work for it a little bit. Tammy, teach him some manners." A massive red tiger with black stripes suddenly jumped out from the shadows and pounced on me, landing on my chest and knocking the wind out of me. I couldn't breathe as it stood atop of me, and its face came closer to mine, large fangs exposed with drool dripping from its maw. It roared loudly, its mouth opening wide, and for a second, I was so terrified I nearly lost bowel control. The ringmaster cracked his whip, and the tiger retreated off of me, doing quick predatory circles nearby and growling at me. "Tammy, that's no way to treat our guest. And you are a guest still. It's not quite sunrise yet. You've still got time to get out, Jordan. You can try to make a run for it, you know. I won't stop you." "Really?" "Nope." I started to back away from him and was about to run away when he finished his thought. "Tammy might, though." I sighed and slumped my shoulders. Looked like I was going to be trapped with the rest of them. Maybe they would put me in a stall close to Sarah at least. "What the hell do you want?" "Oh, I thought that would be obvious by now. Your blood. I want your blood, and your body, and your soul. You're mine now, just like the rest of them. It occurred to me that I hadn't checked to see if the clowns who had captured me had taken my weapon from my jacket pocket. Not that it would look like much of a weapon to the naked eye. Plus, I had put it in my secret pocket. I felt around for it and it was there. Pulling it out, I pointed the little toy water pistol at the demon. "What you got there, kiddo? A water gun? What, did you fill it up with holy water? Guess what? That shit only works in the movies." "Nah, I filled it up with gasoline." His eyes went wide, and he opened his mouth to scream something but was too stunned to speak. I shot him several times quickly with it, and then pulled out my Zippo. It lit on the first strike, and I shot the gasoline through it, catching it alight and sending a beam of fire towards the ringmaster. His red coat caught alight, and he began to scream and flail his arms. His screeches rose higher and higher until they pierced my ears with their shrillness. He suddenly burst into flames like flash paper and was gone a second later. "Holy shit, kid! What did you do?" Gary appeared out of nowhere, and I saw the tiger had evaporated in a puff of smoke. "Where the hell did you come from?" "I hid in that maze when I realized they were going to capture you, and then followed you back here thinking I was going to save your ass. Looks like you didn't need my help after all, though." I looked up to see the entire canopy tent was burning up around us, like paper on fire. It started at the peak where the spotlight had been, and instead of that light, the night sky appeared instead, and the soft glow of the stars and moon. As the canopy tent turned to ash around us, the flakes of it drifting up as embers into the night sky above. We saw a couple people standing around, looking confused and anxious. "Where am I?" a woman nearby asked. It seemed that none of them remembered what had happened, and when I told them, they scoffed at me. "Is that supposed to be some sort of joke?" she asked, sounding angry. I realized the place still had some power over them, as we walked away from there towards where Gary suggested Sarah would be. There were a few, but not nearly as many as we had seen in the carnival. Clearly, most of the inhabitants of the place had not been saved by our actions. Most of them had disappeared when the place had burnt up, and I hoped that they were at least free now. I imagined their souls drifting up into the night sky with the burnt-up ashes of the place, the embers that drifted away in the wind. That was when I saw her. She looked cold in the chill air, hugging herself and warming her arms. Her round glasses were fogging up, and her long pink hair blew around her face in the breeze. "Sarah!" She saw me, and my heart stopped in my chest. I wondered for a moment if she would recognize me, or if this place had stolen her memory like it had the others. But she came running towards me, and I breathed a sigh of relief at the look of recognition in her eyes. We collided in an almost painful embrace, hugging and then kissing, before she asked me, "Where the fuck are we? What's happened to me? I feel so cold." I wish I could say that we lived happily ever after, because we did for the most part. But still, to this day she seems different at times. Colder. I wonder how much of her blood was replaced by that poison, and how much it changed her. Sometimes, I wake up in the night and see her standing over me, smiling. She murmurs in the darkness, and I can just make out the words, Spin the wheel of chance, sir. Take a spin and win your heart's desire. In the dim light, it's difficult to make out the color of her eyes, but I turn on the light just to check. I shake her awake and yell at her, anything to get rid of that dull look of hate and that showman's grin from her face. She tells me she's sleepwalking, but her eyes tell a different story. They used to be blue before she visited the carnival. Now they've turned into a dark purple hue, and they're not changing back.
Greetings, friends and fiends. Chronicler here. We here at Creepy Spaghet would like to thank Jgrupe for allowing us to tell their story. If you enjoyed this story, be sure to subscribe to stay updated on these terrible tales. And be sure to check out the author and consider looking at their book, Beneath the Asylum, in the links below. If you're interested in having your story narrated, be sure to reach out to our humble overseer, as he continues his journey to pull the darkest stories from the infinite depths of the internet. Until next time, fiends.